Hi, students. I realized last night that I had told all of you I would give you help in explaining how you might connect what you're researching to something we've read in the class. And I forgot to do that in this week's module. So I'm adding this video, which I'll also post in this week's module after I send it out to you guys. Um, so you do not need to worry too much about drawing a lot of connections between your research topic and something we read in the class, but you do need to connect them in some way. I have found in the past that one of the easiest ways for students to do that is to use something we read in the class that touched on your topic as a kind of frame for your paper. So last week, a bunch of you practiced starting your research paper with a story, which is great. The other thing you can do after your story, for example, let me think of an example. Let's say you're doing racism in the LA Firefighters Union. And maybe you start by telling a story of, or maybe sexism. I think the big issue with the firefighters union in LA is sexism. Maybe you start your story with, a story about, or start your essay with a story about Jane, who, is harassed by the other firefighters and eventually gives up firefighting because it's such a hostile workplace or whatever. And then you might say, though unions are supposed to help people who are powerless have more power, they have these, problems within them where some people have more power than others. So you might start with a story, and then you might bring up maybe Oscar and Sweat. In the play Sweat by Lynn Nottage, all of the characters belong to the union and count on the union to ensure they will be treated fairly and are paid well. But when they go on strike, Oscar crosses the picket line. Oscar, who's not in the union, crosses the picket line. And when asked why he does that, Oscar refers to the racism his father faced in not being able to join unions. So, the story of Oscar and of Jane the firefighter point out that unions aren't perfect and that even within them, there can be inequalities. And that could even be your thesis. And then you go through your research. You might have 7 or 8 paragraphs, 6 pages. So that's the first part of the frame where you just mention Sweat in the beginning. Maybe you start with a story about Jane as an attention getter. And then one thing that gives a really nice feeling of closure to your paper and also, gives you something to do in your conclusion is after you've proven that, there can be problems of racism or sexism in unions and explained all your research that shows that, at the end of your paper and your conclusion, you might say, Oscar in Sweat would not be surprised by the sexism in the LA Firefighters Union. He saw racism in the union in Pennsylvania or whatever. If we want unions to be better functioning organizations, we need to address these problems or whatever. So that idea of starting with something we've read as to raise the topic that you're going to tell us about, and then to return to it at the end, kind of creates a feeling of going full circle, which can be a really great way to conclude your paper. And that's what I mean by a frame. It's sort of covered on the top and the bottom. So that's a really easy way to connect to something we've read. If in the middle of your essay, you see a connection, you know, maybe there was a union in Wisconsin that, you know, was keeping Latinx people from participating in it. You know, you could say if Oscar from Sweat had wanted to get into a union in Wisconsin, he never could have, or whatever. So you can draw those connections wherever you want in the paper and wherever you see them. And you might even use a quote about something Oscar said that would be really true, still be true today in Wisconsin or whatever. But if you don't know any other way to connect something we've read to your topic, using it to raise the topic at the beginning of your paper, and maybe also in your conclusion to return to it, is a good, easy way to do it. The overall point of wanting you to research a social issue related to something we've read is to think about the relevance of what we've read. So relevance is just whether something is still important. So are the issues Oscar raised in Sweat still important issues? Are the issues that Virginia Woolf raised about men and women having different access to resources, are those issues still important? I'm trying to think of some of the other examples, you know, but basically, you know, I'm trying to think about how these issues raised in these works are playing out today. So I hope that helps you think about how to connect what you're researching to something we've read. And if you're struggling, as always, reach out, let me know, let me help you. All right, take care.